Good evening. I have some news that will delight you. Murder is not dead. I do not refer to the ones splashed all over the front pages. Those are in such bad taste. I refer to those exquisite murders that have a touch of the bizarre and which take fiendish ingenuity to solve. Those are alive and well. One will be presented for your shivering delight immediately.
Is anything wrong?
Am I acting as if there's something wrong?
Hey! Your girlfriend stole $40,000.
Where are you going?
I'm looking for a private island.
You mean an institution? A madhouse?
There are plenty of motels in this area.
She spent last Saturday night at the Bates Motel.
We just keep on lighting the lights and following the formalities.
Isn't this the first place that looks like it's hiding from the world?
I'm sure there's something wrong out there, and I have to know what.
My mother, she isn't quite herself today.
Norman Bates's mother has been dead and buried in Green Lawn Cemetery for the past 10 years.
I declare.
Don't you touch me! Don't! Put me down!
I don't like you going to that house alone.
I can handle a sick old woman.
It's not as if she were a maniac. She just goes a little mad sometimes. We all go a little mad sometimes.
We were on North by Northwest, and we weren't looking for the next one particularly. And it wasn't until we finished shooting and we were preparing for post-production, and Hitcher would read the New York Times book section he'd read it over the weekend or bring it into the office on Monday. And we saw this very good review by Boucher on this book, Psycho. So Hitch said, call Paramount and get coverage on it. Well, Paramount hadn't covered it. And Hitch went over to England, and as he was at the airport, he saw the shelves of this book, Psycho. So he called me and said, haven't you got coverage from Paramount yet? And I said, no, Paramount didn't cover it. So he said, all right. He got the book, and he read it going over, and he called back from London to say, I got our next subject, Psycho.
It's a much more violent book than it is a movie. You know, the girl gets beheaded in the shower as opposed to simply stabbed to death. But the book is mild by comparison with the facts of Ed Gein. This is one of those series of murders that so shocked the nation that it became part of American mythology. And, you know, we weren't around in 1960, so it's hard to know how the facts impacted the fiction. But one's got to assume that one of the reasons why both the book and the movie are so successful is because people knew that, albeit remotely, they were based on truth. The contemporary accounts speak of the police, who I think were a tough bunch of people, still being totally appalled at what they found inside. Here's a guy out in Wisconsin, the wilds of Wisconsin, who does in a whole bunch of his neighbors and his mother. And, you know, these were innocent women who had committed no crime against this man whatsoever. They were just, you know, happened to be his neighbors. I mean, this was obviously a crazy, sad man, and who became a piece of American mythology, I think. And he is the underpinning of Bloch's book, but he obviously is there, we say this, in spirit, in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre pictures, and arguably in Silence of the Lambs. What I think the movie does spectacularly well, and perversely, is bring a curious glamour to the character of Norman Bates. In the book, he's this pudgy, rather, you know, nondescript, short, balding man. And of course, in the movie, it's one of the great performances of cinema. And one of the defining performance of Anthony Perkins' career, and one of those performances everybody knows, even if you've never seen the movie. I mean, it's just, everybody knows Norman Bates.
It's not as if she were a maniac, a raving thing. She just goes a little mad sometimes. We all go a little mad sometimes.
We were looking for a writer, and someone suggested James Kavanagh, who wrote some of the Alfred Hitchcock Presents, the television shows. Now, I don't remember the meetings that they had, but When we got the treatment, we read it, and it was very dull. If you can imagine a dull script written from the book of Psycho, it just didn't have anything. So then it was decided, well, we need another writer. Who we're going to get?
And then
names are suggested, and Hitch thought a lot of Ned Brown, and Ned suggested Joseph Stefano.
My involvement with Psycho began through my agent, Ned Brown, who was determined that I should work with Hitchcock. And Hitchcock had seen the two things that I had done prior to that and wasn't terribly impressed with them, and also didn't care too much to work with young, new writers. So Ned persisted, and Mr. Hitchcock gave in. When I met Mr. Hitchcock at my first meeting, I had to convince him that I could write this movie. And I felt that the best way to do it would be to simultaneously interest him in how I saw it being done and solve the main problem of the material, which was a boy with a dead mother, and we weren't supposed to know she was dead. So I conceived of the story being about Marion, lovely young lady who's having a disastrous affair with a man who can't marry her. She's a rather moral girl. She wants to get married, and she says, we can't meet in hotel rooms anymore. We're not going to do this. And he kind of laughs it off almost. He doesn't really believe her. And this only heightens her frustration. When she gets back to the office, she suddenly has a large sum of money in cash in her hand, and in a moment of madness decides to steal it. So she steals it and is going to go to her boyfriend and give it to him, which in itself is a preposterous notion that he would accept it. And she drives and gets lost in a rainstorm and then finds the motel and goes into the motel and talks to the young man who runs the motel and begins to realize that he's in a trap and she has just put herself in a trap and that she's got to get out of it. And she decides to return the money, and she feels good about this, and she takes a very cleansing shower, and someone comes in and murders her. And at that moment, Hitch said we could get a star to play that part. And I knew I had a job, because he liked that whole introduction to the movie. He liked the fact that it was going to be about her. And then we were suddenly going to do this awful thing to you and say, no, 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 it's not about her, it's about him. My first meeting with Hitchcock took place at his offices at Paramount Studios. Psycho was a Paramount picture. And he was, as always, as I would soon be learning, immaculately dressed, dark suit, white shirt, beautiful tie, sat behind his desk, rarely moved away from his desk, and very warm. I found coming from him a kind of warmth that was not that common amongst directors in those days, nor is it today. But it was a wonderful, wonderful kind of rapport. And his interests were charming. He asked me things about myself, and I told him that I was in analysis, and that, as a matter of fact, I had just come from a session with my analyst, and he was very, very curious about that, but always in a very polite way, but he truly wanted to know what was going on. And I thought that he probably felt that there was more to writing a movie than simply talking about the movie, and I was right. The next day, after the first meeting, we began talking about this movie that we were going to make, called Psycho. We never mentioned the book again, and we never referred to the book again. And there's never any talk about dialogue or motivation. The thing that was a little bit scary at that point in my life about the way Hitchcock worked was that he would not discuss motivations and characters and why people were doing it. He felt that was my job. If I asked him any kind of question like that, he would say, well, that's up to you, Joseph. And I realized early on that he had faith in the writer or he did not have faith. And if he didn't, I don't think you'd be working with him. And he did an interesting thing, though, which kind of amused me and touched me. After we had been talking daily for about week and a half, he said that he and his wife were taking a cruise. And he said, while I'm gone, why don't you write that first scene in the hotel room? And I said, fine, I'll do that. And I wrote it, and when he came back, we resumed our meetings, and I gave him the scene. And the next morning, he said to me, Alma loved it. And I was very touched, because obviously he liked it too. But it was lovely of him to tell me how his wife felt about it, because that was a little easier for him to do. He was not a sentimental man. Or he was, but would not show it, let's put it that way.
My mother was the one who really, you know, was in on everything from the very, very beginning. When he would find a story that he was anxious to do, he would have her read it. If she didn't think it would make a picture, he didn't touch it. And then she would be the first one to read the treatment and the screenplay, and she was, you know, even in on a lot of the casting, too. And it was wonderful. When she died, Charles Chaplin of the Los Angeles Times said the Hitchcock touch had 4 hands and 2 of them were Alma's.
She used to come to the office quite often when we were working on it. And one day was a very, very terrifying experience when we were working on Psycho. We were talking about Norman wrapping the body in the shower curtain and ways to do it without showing the dead body. And Hitch got up and came around his desk, and I was sitting there and on the sofa, and he began to act out. And he said, the camera line is here, and Norman is doing this, and he drags her out. Now he very neatly folds the curtain over her. And as he was doing this, the door opened, and Alma came in. But it was such a shock, because nobody but Alma would ever open that door and come in without a phone call or something, you know. And at the moment, we were so involved in this scene, and to have the door burst open and somebody come in was quite shocking. In my very first meeting with Hitchcock, he said, this is going to be a black and white movie, and it's going to cost under $1 million. And I was flabbergasted, because I had never conceived of Hitchcock at that point in his life making a movie for less than $1 million.
That's exactly what he wanted to do. He said, first of all, I cannot make this picture in color because it will be too gory. And he said, secondly, I want to make it as simply, for as little money as possible, and I'm going to use the TV crew. And that's what he did. He used the crew that was working on his show, Alfred Hitchcock Presents, and he used them for Psycho.
And he mentioned another company that was making very low-budget movies, which were not terribly good, and were doing very well at the box office. And his feeling was, how would it be if somebody good did one of these low-budget movies?
I think Mr. Hitchcock was at the end of his contract with Paramount, and he had already moved to Universal. And I don't think they were pleased with that idea. I don't think they had a great deal of interest in a low-budget film, especially when he had gone to MGM and done North by Northwest, and now he was at Universal. And this was, I think, the last of his contractual obligation to Paramount. So Psycho was a unique motion picture in the fact that it was a Paramount release, a Shamley production made at Universal Studios. Shamley Productions was owned outright by Mr. Hitchcock.
In the book, Norman Bates is actually a middle-aged man, a reprobate, drinks, overweight, wears big thick glasses, peeps through holes. I thought he was incredibly unsympathetic. I didn't like him. So when Marion gets killed, I am then expected to switch my empathy toward this man, and I couldn't do it with the character as he was written. So I perceived a young man, vulnerable, good-looking, kind of sad, makes you feel sorry for him. And Hitchcock said, "What would you think of Tony Perkins?" And of course, that was practically what I had described once I had written the first draft, which incidentally is the one that he shot. He told me that Anthony Perkins was available to play Norman Bates. I had told him that was sensational, and that was what was going to happen. He mentioned Janet Leigh for the star part because he felt, among other things, that no one would be able to accept that we had killed her this early in the movie.
The first thing that happened was that I received the novel by Robert Bloch from Mr. Hitchcock. He sent me this small novel with a note that said, please consider the role of Mary. It was Mary in the novel. And of course there will be changes, and so you know Anthony Perkins is going to play Norman Bates. And he said, you know, the script has not been written, but so you know what the essence of the story is. Well, when I received this, I didn't even have to read it, but I did, only because the opportunity of working with Mr. Hitchcock was enough for me. But I dutifully read it, as I was supposed to, and I finished it. I was very intrigued. I mean, it was so different. It was such a departure, and such an unusual approach to a movie. And so, of course, I just said yes. I have been asked subsequently, well, didn't it ever bother you that the role of Marion in the script was ended so abruptly? And it never did. It never occurred to me that would be a problem. I mean, you know, that didn't even enter my head. The whole thing that I concentrated on was, one, working with Mr. Hitchcock, and two, the anticipation of what was he going to do with this. I couldn't wait to see how he would solve this and weave his magic spell and get this project to the public. As it was getting closer, Mr. Hitchcock called and asked, you know, if we could have a meeting. I said, of course, for several reasons. One, he wanted to, you know, to sort of have a discussion about his modus operandi. I mean, how he worked on the set and how he used his camera. Explained to me how his camera was absolute, and that as a director, he had confidence that I would bring to Marion what it needed. If I had any problems, by all means, he would be there to help me if I, you know, should need it. He said the only sort of control is that my camera has to be the focal point. In other words, when my camera moves, you have to move. And he said, if you have a problem with that, I can help you, you know, with the motivation to move on that point. And I know that many of the performers who have worked with Mr. Hitchcock feel that they were perhaps hindered or cramped in style, say, because they were asked to move at a certain definite point. I took it more as a challenge. I mean, in other words, I thought, well, that's my job. So I can find my own motivation. Thank you very much. I mean, it was really a challenge to me as an actress to rethink and find my own motivation to move at the time he wanted me to move. That's how I took it. And I must say, I think that's how he offered it. I don't think he offered it as a way to stumble or block you. I think he offered it as a challenge. You do your job, I do mine. And he would expect someone to adapt to it and to find their own reason to move. And if not, he was there as the director to help you. So I never understood that sort of, you know, antithesis that happened with some people. But I can understand it, but it just doesn't seem warranted to me. The other reason for the meeting was he had hoped to fit me with contact lenses for the last shot, when the camera is on the eye and pulls back into the wide shot, thinking that the contact lenses would give the look of nothing, deadness, as opposed to what I could do. And we went, and unfortunately, at that time, that long ago, the contact lenses weren't as sophisticated as they are today, and it would have taken 6 weeks for me to be able to get used to wearing the contact lenses, and so we couldn't use them. And so he said, well, you're going to have to go it alone, you know, old girl.
Yes, miss?
I'm Marion's sister.
Sure, Lila.
Is Marion here?
Vera Miles was groomed for the part in Vertigo, and she became pregnant prior to that, and Mr. Hitchcock got rather upset with Vera, but she came back on Psycho to play the sister.
Vera Miles had been under contract to Hitchcock, and she owed him one more picture, and this seemed like a small part, the sister. But actually it wasn't, and it was very necessary to get an actress of that stature to play the part in order to continue to keep the audience with her. Because at an early point in the movie, we asked you to forget everybody you loved and like these people. And that's a very hard thing to do. You need incredibly subtle performances to get that. And I think Vera gave it.
Sam, we have to go into that cabin and search it, no matter what we're afraid of finding or how much it may hurt.
I know.
Gavin was under contract to Universal, where the movie was going to be shot. We saw some film on him, a movie he had done at Universal, and liked him very much, and decided to go with him.
Is anyone at home?
No.
Oh, there's somebody sitting up in the window.
No, there isn't.
Oh, sure, go ahead, take a look.
Martin Balsam came out of New York, and Mr. Hitchcock, he always leaned to New York actors on a great many of his character roles. In a lot of his pictures, if you'll remember, these people were New York either stage or, in those days, there was Playhouse 90 and Climax, which was made in New York, and a lot of fine actors were based in New York.